Nope.
I've had a fear of rats for as long as I can remember. I don't know exactly what it is about them that scares me. It's not just the tail, or the way they move, or how they sound. It's everything, and it's nothing. To me, rats have always been synonymous with unconditional terror. It all comes from a childhood trauma. A large rat chased me up a hill where I had to hide in a tool shed. The thing seemed rabid, and I had to sit in there for at least an hour, listening to the squeals and cries of the desperate thing that wanted to eat me. It was an unusually big rat, larger than some cats I've seen. It's called musophobia, and up until recently, it hasn't really been an issue. I mean, sure, I can get panic attacks and a flight reaction by just seeing one, but I've been able to keep them out of my life more often than not. Sure, now that I'm a parent, I won't let my 2 kids have a hamster, but I'm pretty sure the Yorkshire Terrier we have keeps them busy. My phobia became an issue not too long ago. I was driving the kids home from school. Traffic was being rerouted for maintenance, so I had to take a smaller dirt road instead of staying on Main. It wasn't far, and there was barely any traffic. The road goes by a set of fishing cabins, set up around the lake, but was extended to lead back to the main road further up ahead. Usually there's nothing but frogs there. As I drove by, a small family of 6 rats ran straight across the road. This has never happened to me before. My body spasmed, and my mind blanked. I panicked and turned the car straight into a pine tree. It was such a strange feeling. I heard this loud screaming and tried to cover my ears, only to realize that I was the one screaming. My oldest daughter managed to call 911. My reaction was far scarier to them than the crash itself. We were fine. I was driving slowly, and everyone turned out okay. Even the car was okay after some light body work. However, my wife insisted I start going to therapy to deal with this fear once and for all. I couldn't say no. Not again. There aren't many mental health professionals in the nearby area, so the list of available therapists wasn't long. I could go for 2 sessions a week if it wasn't too far away. I was looking for assisted exposure therapy, and truth be told, I was a bit on edge about the whole thing. My wife was the driving force behind the decision, so she pretty much just pointed me where to go. She chose to sign me up for a session with Dr. Jane Bogan. Dr. Jane was excited to see me. She was in her 40s and had this combed back Elvira-looking hairdo, but without the volume. At first sight, you might mistake her for a medium or a psychic. It wasn't the best first impression, but her credentials checked out. We shook hands, her wrist rattling with jewelry and chains. She insisted I call her Jane. The office was kind of murky. Dark gray wallpaper with matching carpet. Plenty of bookshelves with a desk set up in the corner. And of course, fancy leather lounge chairs. The kind you can straighten out to lie down in. Her assistant, Jeremy, offered me a cup of coffee and a donut before returning to an adjacent room. Apparently, he helped all 4 offices in the building with their scheduling, but Jane was the only one working today. Jeremy was a short, balding man with a tired look. He had some kind of accent, but I couldn't put my finger on what. European, I think. Today he's all ours, Jane joked. Jeremy didn't laugh. Jane and I had a long talk about my phobia. I told her about the tool shed on top of that grassy hill and the screeching sounds of the rabid rat, the desperate scratching trying to make a dent in the front door. I told her about the car crash and how my body just seized up and refused to let me act. Jane was a very active listener, asking follow-up questions and making notes along the way. She nodded, made eye contact, and seemed very attentive. She was good, and just talking openly about my fear was refreshing. At the end of the first session, Jane explained her thoughts to me. Until next time, I'll present a treatment plan, but I can already say you are a prime candidate for overexposure therapy. Do you mean exposure therapy? I asked. No, this is different, she smiled and touched my hand. Overexposure is slightly different, but far more effective in the long run. It also doesn't require you to actually meet or touch any rats. It can simply be done right here in the office. Really? I've never heard of that. I'm licensed to perform it, she said, and stood up. She pointed out a diploma next to her desk. Right there, underneath a degree from Minnesota State, was a license from the Board of Behavioral Health and Therapy, the BBHT. It looked official enough, and I didn't have any reason to distrust her. I agreed to discuss it with my wife. Of course, it wasn't much of a discussion. I didn't mind trying something new, and my wife was overjoyed to see me progressing. We tried looking up overexposure therapy, but it didn't give us anything. Most links were just explaining how regular exposure therapy works. I didn't like the idea of facing my fear, but with the guidance of Dr. Jane, it felt a bit easier. She was a professional after all. I called her and agreed to the treatment. She explained that it would be best to set aside a full day for it. We booked the upcoming Saturday. It wouldn't be cheap, but she guaranteed a breakthrough. I'd wager my reputation on it, she laughed. The next Saturday, I kissed my wife goodbye and left to see Dr. Jane. I was nervous, but seeing my girls wave goodbye as I pulled out of the driveway calmed my heart. They were so worried about me. I had to get better. When I got to Dr. Jane's office, she was waiting for me in the parking lot. Jeremy was there as well, despite it being a Saturday. My car was the only one in the parking lot, making me wonder if Jane lived nearby and walked to work. As I got out of the car, I noticed Jeremy holding a cup of coffee and a donut. We hadn't even stepped inside yet. He didn't even blink much. Glad you can make it, Jane said. It's gonna be a long day. Jeremy handed me the coffee and donut, and we entered the office. One of the lounge chairs was set up so I could lie down. I noticed how Jeremy lingered in the room until Jane stared him down. Then she turned her attention to me. It felt like staring into a furnace. Have a seat. I laid down as she dimmed the lights. Close your eyes and do not be alarmed, she continued. What are you... I didn't have time to say anything else. Jane touched her thumb to my forehead, and my mind was set on fire. That's the only way I can explain the sensation. My mind flared, and there was an intense heat. Wave after wave, fanning out from the point on my forehead she touched. Heat, then freezing cold. There was a taste of metal and a smell of burning rubber, like getting a tattoo on my brain. I couldn't open my eyes, and I couldn't feel my hands or feet. It felt like I was sinking into the chair, deeper and deeper. "Relax," a disembodied voice demanded. I felt my breath stopping, my heart slowing. Fire turned to ice. I could have sworn I was dying, but my body didn't respond. I was losing control. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed part 1 of this story. If you did, you know what to do. Take that like button and chase it up a hill into a shed, but this time don't just leave, break down the door and just smash it. Shout out to the author of this story, D.D. Wikman. I will leave a link down below to their Reddit page where he, and I quote, uploads a new story every week on either Friday or Saturday. So check it out and feel free to go read ahead as usual. Until next time, until part 2, I should say, remember to stay safe out there. I'll be seeing you in the next video.